Right, well, good evening, everybody. I do hope you can all hear me okay, and thank you ever so much for logging in for tonight's Virtual Fisheries Forum, Creating Habitat on Stillwater Fishery. Um, so before we begin, just a little bit of housekeeping for the benefit of the people that haven't been to a virtual fisheries forum before. So if you don't know me, my name's Alex. I've been involved in organising meetings like this for the Angling Trust for nearly the last 5 years now, both in person as our regional forums and online as the virtual format like tonight. So depending on the device that you're logging in from, you should see a Q&A button either at the bottom of your screen if you're on a desktop or at the top of your screen if you're on a tablet or mobile device. So if you'd like to ask a question at any time, you can just hit that Q&A button, type in what you want to say, and your questions will then come through to myself and our guest for this evening, Paul, who I'm going to introduce shortly. I should also note that the presentation content itself is going to be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel after the meeting. So if you've got any other committee members, people involved in your fishery that you'd like to share it with, you'll be able to do so then. And obviously we'll be having a Q&A session as well, and we'll produce a written version of that Q&A to accompany the recording itself. We are due to finish for 8:30, and with this being quite a popular meeting tonight, in the event we don't get round to answering all your questions before that time, we'll of course do our very best to follow them up in writing afterwards and include them within that Q&A document. One other final thing to note is there is a very short survey as well for you to fill in. That'll just flash up on your screen when the meeting finishes. If you'd literally spare just 2 or 3 minutes just to fill that out, it would be really helpful for us just in terms of letting us know what you thought about the meeting, ways to improve, and suggest some topics for the future as well, things like that. So I think I've covered most bits. So I will now bring in our very special guest for this evening, Paul Coulson, who's Director of Operations at the Institute of Fisheries Management. Familiar face to many, I'm sure, but a real expert on these matters. So welcome for tonight, Paul.
Evening, Alex. Evening, everybody.
So Paul's going to. So what we're going to do? Paul's going to pull up his presentation shortly, run through, and then we'll obviously go into that open Q&A session. What I would advise, because it is quite a significant topic, there's a lot of information involved, and I think Paul's presentation is going to reflect that. So if you do have any questions, you might want to wait until the presentation itself is finished before asking them, just purely on the basis that what you ask might be answered later on. So on that note, I will hand over to Paul, and see you soon for the Q&A.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Alex. And evening, everybody. Yeah, as Alex said, my name is Paul Coulson, and I work for the Institute of Fisheries Management. I'm our Director of Operations, but I also have several other hats. I'm the Chairman of the East Yorkshire Rivers Trust. I'm a freshwater fish expert for the British Rodcourt Fish Record Committee. So if you ever catch a freshwater fish above a British record in England and UK, it comes to our group. And I also do several other things with regards to sort of rivers trusts and what have you. But this evening, Alex has asked me to give you a talk about habitat and habitat creation and the importance of habitat within fisheries. And I've sort of come at it from a quite a wide sort of view, if you like. So we'll have I'll put my presentation up and we'll go through the overview, and then we will take it from there. So yeah, if I just stop my camera, I might just improve my bandwidth slightly. Yeah, so the talk of the overview, fisheries habitat creation, there's a lot in it. So we're going to kick off a little bit about management planning. I do like to sort of reiterate with angling clubs and associations and fisheries about management and the importance of doing some management in advance. And then I'm just going to sort of kick off the main body of the talk really with a bit about rivers, and then we'll just to sort of set the scene and sort of show the difference between sort of what some of the work we do on the rivers and the difference to what work we do on still waters. Then we move to climate change, but then looking at different habitats, look a bit on predation, and then we'll look at the value of plants and then stocking, and there's other bits and pieces in there as well. So really, just if you've been to one of our talks before, I often start with a couple of slides about management and planning and fishery management plans. Uh, it's important as a fishery and as when you start to look at improvements and changes you might want to make, that you actually think about where you want to go with the fishery. You sort of analysing what you've done already, where you are with it, where you'd like to get the fishery to, and what those sort of intermediate sort of goals might be as you progress along that plan towards your end goal. And really, this it can be as simple as you want it to be. You can write it down. You can scribble it on the back of a napkin in the pub. But just have something to refer to, something to help you to sort of build your fishery around, and something you can come back to and keep referring to as you develop your plans and move forward. And when you're looking at fisheries and management planning, yeah, really, you've got to think about who the users are, so your stakeholders, be your anglers or whoever it might be. But also, you've also got to think about your the fish and the flora and the fauna that live within that body of water. And this really helps us to move that forward and to look at how these are to be monitored. And there's loads of stuff you can put in there. We can do a lot of this quite simply by just having a wander around. We can use online mapping software, things like Magic Map and the like, to work out surface area and shape. We can often get depth by asking the anglers. You can use these sort of bait boat mounted sort of fish finders now, which help you with depth. Or you can ask anglers with marker floats and things. All of these things can go in there. I've even looking at things like stock biomass, right down to sort of your fish health, also your access points, and then any restrictions on that site as well. If you're dealing with a protected site, a designated site, a triple SI, an SPA, an SAC, whatever it might be, there might be some restrictions that are going to stop you from doing some of the things you might want to do. And there's loads of ways of doing surveys. So it's just a few on there for those of you who maybe aren't familiar. These coloured maps down here, they're from a program called Biobase, which is a cloud-based piece of software that analyzes data gathered from a fish finder. I think it's a Lowrance at the minute that the Environment Agency use, and these are really it's next level sort of surveys data really. So these can tell you depth, they can tell you gradients, they can tell you bed type, so they can tell you how much vegetation you've got, how deep your sediments are, a whole raft of things. And they're actually putting another layer now in which will even pick out the fish within that as well. You've got traditional surveys. You can get the guys in with seine nets, fish surveys. You can use these deeper castable fish finders now. And even if you want to go really sort of next level sort of modern, you can look at eDNA surveys as well, and you can have a water sample analyzed, and you can pull all that off, and it'll actually tell you what's in there without actually seeing what's in there, which is quite unique. And again, these things are getting better and better and cheaper as we move on with them. So basically, just to kick off, come up with an idea of what you want to do, put some plans down, and then look at how you're going to produce and do these surveys. And this slide is something we show a lot of any of you have been to any of our workshops before that we run for the Environment Agency or any of our training courses. We try and put good fisheries welfare right at the middle of what we're trying to do when we're managing fisheries. And you'll see on there's a number of different sort of elements to consider that all feed into the welfare of your stock within your fishery. And you'll see right at the top there, we've got good physical habitat, and that might be leading to artificial shelter. And you'll notice by the red arrows that a lot of these are interconnected. One thing connects to the other. So, for instance, stock health is linked directly to stock density, how many fish you've got. The more fish you've got, you might need to look at something like supplementary feeding. And also that links in quite nicely with water quality. If you manage your water, then you're normally managing the health and welfare of that stock as well. And within stock health, we also have to think things like within that stock, we also need to think about species suitability. What have we got within our fishery? How susceptible are these species to things like disease, predation, angling pressure? How sensitive are they as well? So this is really just something we need to sit down and sort of think about. we've got to think more about, or get away from thinking about fish as a resource and think of fish as an animal. Yeah, it is a sentient being, and it does need to be protected, and the welfare of the animal really should be at the forefront of our thinking when we're looking at management plans and improving our waters. So with regards to habitat improvements, really what you're thinking about is, improving the habitat of your fishery. You're looking at better conditions for the fish, healthier fish, happier fish. Your anglers benefit as well. You'll catch more fish and you'll catch better quality fish, and the angling should improve as a consequence of the work that you're doing. And these improvements will benefit. Hopefully, what we want to see is them benefiting both the fish and the environment as a whole. The anglers want to go to sit by a pond or a lake or a river, whatever it might be, and have a nice day. And I would hope the vast majority of anglers would like to want to sit in an environment that has got plants, it has got trees, it has, we have got dragonflies flying around and kingfishers and everything else. It's a holistic approach to the environment rather than thinking about just the angling experience and the fish as well. I admit some of the fisheries that you guys are managing may well be engineered. You might have got an empty barren gravel pit, or you might be managing an old park lake that's concrete lined. So you might have to think about some heavier engineering work or heavier improvements to try and get the fishery to a level where you want to be. Yeah, but at the end of the day, if we can improve the habitat for the fish and the wildlife, we should see a better fishing as a result. I just wanted to show you what happens when you get rid of the habitat. So this is on my local canal. I'll just turn the volume down a little bit. So this is a goosander feeding on a canal near me. What you maybe can't quite see is it's got a perch in its mouth that's probably about 12 ounces, and it's so big the bird can't actually take off. And these things moved into the canal a couple of winters ago, and they sort of started to build up in numbers. And what happened is they completely changed the behaviour of the fish. This canal's only shallow, it's 3 foot deep down the middle in most places, and you'll notice from that picture that there's not a lot of marginal cover. There's very little habitat. It's a strange beam because it's actually tidal, so it goes directly out into the Humber. It's controlled by a set of lock gates. So it actually moves like a river when the lock gates are open and the water's allowed to run out. So what happened was the fish all found the only shelter they could find, which happened to be the M62 motorway bridge. And this picture you can see on the right hand side here is a still picture that some friends of ours took from off the motorway bridge, looking down into the water. And the one on the left here is actually a video, but for some reason, as always happens, I can't get that video to work on here, but I have got it. So just bear with me just 1 second. If I just pick up the video here, now you should be able to see that. If I just turn the volume down, I click play, you should be able to see the balls of fish. They're roach and bream, and they're sort of clambering over each other to get into the shade. And what we actually found was here as well is that there was pike sort of harassing them, and they were looking for any sort of any cover they could find. I mean, there's God knows how many hundreds of pounds of fish just all trying to clamber under the bridge. And the point really of me sort of showing that was to show you what happens when you get rid of the habitat. So this is another video.
Here we are under Sandome Bridge.
If I just mute Mike. So Mike's just stood here with a deeper, and he's on the other side of the bridge, and he's just chucked it in, and you can see on there where the fish are. And if I just pause it there, you can see what we're dealing with regards to habitat. There isn't any. Anything that overhangs into the water is being cut back by the internal drainage board as a flood mitigation activity. The trees have been cut back. There's no marginal vegetation at all. The reeds have been cut down right to the water level. So there's nowhere for these fish basically to hide. So you've just, in effect, you've got a barren, open, straight piece of water with the only cover being the road bridge. Hence the reason all these fish were sort of corralled underneath. And what did that do to match weights? Well, that's the last match, one of the last matches we fished on there. And for those of you who aren't match anglers, DNW means did not weigh. The middle section there, so pace 24 to 30, they all packed up. And in those first sort of, what's that, 7-8 pegs, that 004 is 4 drams. So not even an ounce was caught. And then the end pegs, 38, 39, and 40 were the 3 pegs closest to the bridge. It basically led to the sort of the end of the sort of match fishing on there. And I've blanked out the name, so you don't know, but my name is in there. I was one of the DNWs on that particular day. I actually had 3 DNWs on the bounce, which just about did me in for canal winter fishing. But it did change the behavior of the fish. And this we one of the key driver was partly was the predation, but it was also the fact that there was very little in the way of habitat for the fish there. There was nowhere for them to go, for them to hide from the predators. So just to really to bring it back to sort of the importance of habitat then. So I just thought I'd start with rivers. Of those of you who are engaged with rivers or follow the likes of the chaps of the Wild Trout Trust and people like Professor Johnny Gray, who works for the Wild Trout Trust and does a lot of work up my neck of the woods. Rivers like it rough. We actively put in habitat. We chuck trees in. You'll see the guys in the top left there. They've got winches and are adding in whole trees, and they're chucking in, plenty of woody debris to add some sort of roughness. The guy in the bottom right here has got a digger. That's half a 3/4 of a full tree, and they're sort of pinning it into place. And rivers really value and benefit from having this, what we refer to as this large woody debris, and the smaller stuff as this coarse woody debris. And it brings real value. It alters velocity. It brings sort of vital shade. It creates niches and feeding areas, spawning areas, habitat, nursery areas for smaller fish. And of course, importantly as well, it provides some cover and some shade from predators. So when we're looking at rivers, we're actually physically looking at adding roughness. We want to put the woody material, the cover, everything back in. Yeah, and I appreciate with rivers, we want that sort of flow complexity. We want them to, we want it to sort the gravels. We want it to mobilize the sediment. We want to provide different areas. But we really understand that with rivers, that we want to chuck in some woody debris. We need the shade and we need the cover. And I think the guys who and those organizations, those teams who are working on rivers have really got an understanding of this value of habitat. And I just took this out of an old project now, which is something called Keeping Rivers Cool, which was probably finished about 4 or 5 years ago. And it's just looking at adding large trees, in this case, really, to the margin, to that sort of riparian zone and the marginal sort of aquatic zone of rivers, and the value it can bring in providing shading. Really important, particularly when we're looking at summers like we had last year and the year before, these heat wave sort of scenarios. It provides importance when it comes to things like binding the banks. It does nutrient stripping. There's lots and lots of benefits. It adds nutrients in the form of leaf fall, which adds carbon into the system, and then that drives invertebrates and things like that. So we've really worked it out with regards to rivers and the value of particularly of large trees. And you can sort of look at this as well. So if you look at the various zones, so that aquatic zone, which we get both within in rivers, but also still waters in lakes, tree roots and that coarse woody debris. It can provide erosion control, and in lakes they can help to bind the banks. It provides different thermal regimes as well. So it provides that, what we refer to as that thermal refuge, somewhere for them to get out of the heat, that cooler water. Again, shelter from predators. And as we start to you move away from the river and from the banks and out into the sort of that riparian zone and then into open land, it's still adding value. Particularly when it comes to things like shade. We've found that with rivers, keeping rivers cool, shade is really important. And then also with the trees, that material they're adding, that nutrients they're adding into the rivers, helps again with feeding the invertebrates, which in turn feeds the fish, and then we get that nutrient shift through the system. So we get it with regards to rivers, and this is just hot off the press for any of you who do work on rivers and are interested in planting. The guys on the Tweed forum have just produced this. I think it came out last year. It's as new as last week, I think, and just really short. Just sort of took again just a grab of the sort of the key messaging really from what these what the trees and planting can give to rivers. And again, same applies in some of these to still waters as well, particularly when you're looking at things like diffuse pollution and nutrient runoff and managing sediments that might be coming from the sort of the surrounding land where lakes are concerned. So there is value to add in these. And again, if you want to look and look at the research, there's loads of it. Woody debris in rivers on Google Scholar, 86,800 results. And there's loads of these. River and debris introduced leads to rapid improvement in the aquatic macrodiversity. And then if you look up here, you can see the sort of the number of species that we find with large woody debris is markedly greater than those without. Excuse me, going the wrong way. And the same with abundance. We get a lot more invertebrates with wood and with material in rivers than we do in areas without, which probably you can imagine makes sense. And what animal wants to be in an open body of water? Where it finds it difficult to find a niche for it to live in, or it's always open to predation and everything that moves might want to eat it. So, it does show the value in adding this into, and I think the guys in rivers have really got a grasp of it. And same applies with climate change. You've got to have your head well and truly buried somewhere very, very deep to not appreciate that climate change is a thing. Anybody who's got any environmental leaning at all will tell you that we're in the middle of a climate catastrophe, if you like. And this is a slide from somewhere at the RSPB presented at an event I was at a while ago, and this is looking at biodiversity response to climate change, so which is something that's referred to as range shift. So as the temperature increases, where are these animals going to go to maintain or find that environment that they're comfortable in? So fish, which are here, they've sort of already started to shift further north, and that sort of 50 kilometers for most species, with an expected range shift of up to sort of 75 kilometers north. But when you start to look at some of the other aquatic species, so dragonflies and damselflies, they're already shifting north. So those more sensitive species and aquatic bugs as well, those more sensitive aquatic animals are starting to shift with climate change, and they're really moving at a pace, to 50, 60, 70 kilometers at a time. So they're really moving. And the only animals that are going the opposite direction are these reptiles and amphibians, which like it hot. Reptiles being lizards and things, they're going to move further south as it becomes warmer. So really we're in a bit of a pickle when it comes to climate, and we can show that here. So this is some work by the Centre of Ecology and Hydrology, and just to explain the coloured bars, the green bars are species that we've got some records for. The orange bars are ones that are well recorded, and the blue bars are ones we've got a lot of evidence for. So with fish, you can see there quite again sort of mirrors that last slide, sort of 50 kilometers already as we're starting to move. And this is quite a few years old now as well, so it's probably 2010, 11. So it is showing we were certainly further north, and aquatic bugs again, we picked out those, pick them out on here, and the dragonflies over here as well. They're really starting to move. So those the fish are moving, and the animals that they feed on, the aquatic bugs, the invertebrates are moving as well. So we've got to be conscious of this, and we've got to try and minimize that as much as we can by maintaining a healthy environment within our fisheries. And it's not getting cooler, is it? 2023, hottest year on record globally. That's on the long-term average, 1850 upwards. And you'll notice when you look at that bar graph, there's no bars, with the exception of the late 70s where it went down. Every year from 80, it's been a progressive shift north towards that sort of 1.5 degree sort of maximum that we're trying to keep below if we can. So we're definitely on a warming planet, and the aquatic animals that we cherish, if you like, are impacted quite heavily by this. So how does that impact the sort of climate change and habitat work with fish? So for a population to be successful, it has to prosper and benefit and thrive in the environment that it's in. And we need to try and satisfy all of their basic needs of a fish. And what the limiting factors often here are habitat constraints, which is what we're here to talk about, predation, things eat them. Yeah, if they get predated on, they're no longer there. Competition, disease. But basically, if we can improve the habitat, reduce the predation, reduce the competition, and minimize the risk of disease, the population should thrive and should grow from there. And obviously, as we've just said, climate change is an issue, and it's something that we're going to have has a big impact on survival rates, particularly with this sort of changing weather patterns that we're getting at the moment. You may have heard of fishery scientists, or when you've read some fishery reports, you have people they'll often talk about year classes and year class strength, and basically all that means is if you get a good population, a good spawning year, if you like, the population survives, it progresses through the population of a preceding year. So you see more fish and then larger fish as the population moves through. So that's often referred to as a year class or a year class strength. And you can sometimes see in a population when you're missing a year class, because there'll be an age range of fish that will be completely missing from the population. And that sometimes can be a symptom of a cold summer or a wet summer. We've had summer flooding and fish haven't been able to survive the colder temperatures, or heavy floods in a winter, and those sort of first year fish have been washed out, whatever it might be. So yeah, so it's important to have an understanding of that natural variation, I think, within our populations. And what is it that really influences those populations? And you'll see in there those three areas I've sort of highlighted: so flow, temperature, and habitat. Yeah, really, it's these three factors have a big influence on the survivability, or the potential for a population of fish to survive through their first year into second year and onwards. So they need good habitat, they need an adequate temperature, and in rivers they need a suitable flow. But also other elements that we can sort of maybe sort of help with is things like food. Do make sure there's enough food in the right food sources and the sizes for the fish as well. And all these things will feed in and will help them grow and hopefully survive and move forward as they go on. Just to make that a little bit more complex for you, so this is a model I took out of an Environment Agency text, and it's basically showing you how complex coarse fisheries are within. This is in a riverine environment, but again, the same applies to a degree within stillwaters. And all those bits that are in red are the bits we really need to learn more about, or we're always sort of trying to study and find out more about, what's the suitable habitat, how old are these fish when they're mature, what's the fecundity of the fish, how many eggs do they produce, what's the recruitment like? It really is just to show that it's a really complex process, and something we still need to learn a little bit more about. But certainly, the work and the research that gets done helps us to develop and build on the knowledge we've already got. And again, just to show you within sort of the fish will move to find the right habitat for them. So I'm sure a lot of you are aware of Dr. Mark Everard and the work he's done. Dr. Redfin, as he often sometimes gets referred to in the angling times, a super roach angler. And this is from his book about river habitats for coarse fish. And basically, it's just showing you that vegetation spawning fish like roach, gravel spawning fish like barbel will move within river systems many, many miles in some cases to find suitable habitat for spawning. And then when they've spawned, the young will drop down the system and find a suitable habitat for them to grow and to develop in. And so we don't think about coarse fish migrations enough sometimes, and there's been lots of work done over the years looking at barbel in in the rivers. They're looking at bream migration in the Norfolk Broads and in the Witham and places like that. And these fish are moving miles up and down river to find suitable habitat, suitable spawning habitat, overwintering habitat where they can get out of the main flow. And it's something we don't really consider, but it's a really important sort of element of their life cycle. And again, particularly when you're looking at things like roach, the Avon Roach Project have done a lot of work on this as well by trying to add some spawning medium into barren areas of the rivers to try and get the roach to spawn, and then they can obviously take that away and put it into tanks and bring the roach on that way, and then put the young roach back into the river. So yeah, just to show what these fish are moving a long way for habitat. So looking at how do we sort of put these points together and sort of connect the dots, particularly where spawning is concerned. Now, we want to try and develop self-sustaining populations of fish within our waters. If we can minimize the risk of bringing in fish from elsewhere, from fish farms or cropping wells, whatever it might be, we minimize that risk of disease. So if we can get the habitat right within our fisheries, we can hopefully, we've obviously got the right fish at the right age and the right numbers of each, where we can bring on our own. So finding a habitat where or developing a habitat where fish can spawn, important in still waters. We want it to be heavily vegetated, predominantly in lakes. We want it to be quite shallow, we want it to be quite warm. We also want to have that connectivity between the area where the eggs are deposited, where the alevins, where the young hatch, and then where the fry can then thrive. So we need to make sure we've got that connectivity within the lake or wherever it might be. So once we've got that, we want to try and look at nurture and develop this sort of fry habitat. And you can see these complex habitats. If you was to sort of stop and count up here the number of aquatic plants we've got in there, there's certainly double figures quite easily. Same as in here, you've got sort of potamogeton and different ones, and this is a sort of river, and you can see those big rich beds of ranunculus of water crowfoot in there, and it's all great fry habitat. And if you're considering these when coarse fish hatch, they're an eyelash size animal, and they're not particularly mobile. They're not going to swim across a 10-acre gravel pit from where they were spawned to find a suitable habitat. So for them to grow, so we need to develop and make sure that the habitat we've got within our fishery is such that we can the fish can spawn, and the fry can also find somewhere that they find suitable to whilst they develop, and they like it. They like it warm, and they like a lot of food. So shallow vegetated margins that warm up quickly is what we're looking for, really. So back to still waters then. Some of the lakes are devoid of habitat, and if you look at the picture on the right, that's my local park lake, very neatly revetted with some solid timber stakes all the way around, and that's to support the footpath. And just behind that fence are the wallabies, so it's a good job the fence is there, so I don't think we really want them bouncing through our swim. But this is the sort of the council of parks department. They've shored up the banks, but as a result of that, there's very little in the way of habitat there. Great for erosion control, but not great for fish. So we could do something there. We could look at improving the habitat, and there's certainly ways we can go about doing that. There are too many fisheries now that look like this. All right, I'm being flippant, carp in a bath, but they don't have any cover. You've basically got fish swimming around in open bodies of water, and that's stressful. Okay, maybe this isn't a great fishery either, but it does sort of show the sort of moonscape type environment that we can sometimes think we're dealing with. And then if you go back to parks, we can add habitat, but often that's the form of a shopping trolley, or it's a traffic cone, or it's a moped. It's whatever gets chucked in by the local kids on the way home from school, or whatever it might be. But habitat, it is vital, and we really need to look at how we put it in, just to show you that it also finds its way into rivers as well. But if you're resourceful, you can always put a shopping trolley sun lounger outside your clubhouse and put them to good use. But these things, even though we pay for them now, that shopping trolley is probably still on the left, has probably still got a pound coin stuck in it somewhere. Yeah, they do get slung in, and this is the sort of, sometimes the only habitat we see within some of these waters. These are all fisheries. The one in the top right with the aerator running isn't a fish farm. That's a 22 peg match lake. Not great. Yeah, there's not a lot of habitat in there. This one here, it's one of the donut type sort of match lakes. There's odd reed stems here, but again, the habitat's all high and dry as the water levels dropped. Yeah, and there's a couple of dead fish sort of bobbing around in there as well. This is another fishery, and when we went to look at this one, the owner was thrilled by his imported plastic pallets that he'd bought, and they'd cost him X amount each, and he was delighted with them, and they were level and the blah blah blah. What he'd forgotten was that when he put his islands in, the prevailing wind up here was easterly off the North Sea, and his islands just eroded away. The wave energy just took the islands, and the next time I went to see it, they were revetted with sheet pile and brick to try and protect them. So lovely platforms, badly designed. And the one bottom left, you can really sort of see now this is a freshly dug lake. It's a thick, muddy bog, but there's some road planings for you to walk down to and sit on your seat box. The bit where we always say about fisheries, let them mature, let the fish become comfortable, do your planting and get things established. It really goes out the window sometimes with fisheries, and I appreciate there's an economic driver there. You've dug a pond, it's got to be, you want to get the fish in there, but sometimes we need to just step back and let these things develop and grow and mature. I certainly wouldn't want to be putting my seat box and kit into a puddle like that. But not all habitat is good habitat. Yeah, all right, that's a burnt out car upside down, but there are some lovely yellow water lilies just around there. So probably nice tench bubbling around in the sump of the car. The tree falling over on the right hand side shows what happens when when trees get too big on too shallow soils. That was actually on an island, and that one came down during a storm. Luckily, there was nobody fishing at the time, but that's actually gone over, and the island splits up the pond. That fell over and fell back over the other side of the lake and into somebody else's swim on the other side. As I said, right place, right time. In the middle, you can see there's too much in the way of marginal trees. There's no aeration, there's no wind getting on there at all. And the one in the top left was another badly designed island, which had actually slumped and disappeared, and all that was left was the wooden stakes and the plastic material they'd used to try and save it. So again, a little bit of thought and how and management is important as well. So by trying to add sort of some physical improvements, we can really benefit and improve the fishery, and we can provide refuge, we can provide spawning sites, we can use loads of different materials to create these sort of underwater habitats. They add these habitat and these areas where we maybe haven't got them, and things like underwater reefs. You can use lots of different materials. You can use floating islands. There's a whole raft of different ideas you can do to provide habitat when you haven't got any, or you've got minimal amounts. And you can sort of show, and you can see this. And this one beneath British Waters, a team of guys who go out into lakes and dive with the fish. And the picture on the left hand side just shows the sort of number of fish that can stack up in a winter underneath a tree. So that's you can see the roots of the tree there. And then again on the right hand side, you can sort of see the feeding spots where these fish have rubbed the vegetation clear to get at whatever was underneath it. So these are really valuable, and it doesn't, you don't need much. That's not the biggest of tree, and there's several sort of large double figure carp sat under there finding some shelter and some obviously feeling quite safe underneath there. This time of year, we've all got Christmas trees, or if we haven't already got rid of them in our brown bins, or put them back in their boxes and took the lights off and the plastic ones and put them back in the cupboard till next year. But this is something that we've done on in some still waters, we've certainly used Christmas trees in rivers in the past for securing banks and securing stabilizing banks as well. This sort of this Christmas tree idea, and when we sort of look at this sort of woody debris and this adding it in, it provides that sort of stable structure. It adds sort of good quality sort of foraging, feeding habitat. We get preferential invertebrates on there. It's good spawning substrate, particularly for species like perch, seem to do quite well with it. And where we put them in, we do see sort of improvements in sort of fish numbers and sort of angler catches as well. And so it's not just us. So this is over in the States, Kansas, looking for somewhere to toss your Christmas tree. Yeah, that's probably the biggest Christmas tree I think I've ever seen. But they certainly will put them to good use. And again, it doesn't have to be Christmas trees. We've got old woody material in here, sort of bound together with concrete blocks. That in some respects, that sort of looser structure, as you can see on here, it is maybe better than some of the Christmas trees. Christmas trees can be quite dense, particularly if you've got those sort of Nordman non-drop sort of fair type trees. They need to have some holes cut in them. Take a pair of loppers to them, chop some holes in so the fish can get in. When you're looking at this loose woody structure, cut off marginal trees or from felled trees, bound round a concrete block, taken out into the lake where you put your structure in, and just dropped overboard, and they'll last for a decent amount of time. If you're putting them in and your anglers aren't aware, then you might want to just make them aware. Put some a notice up or a map. I mean, I'd love to say stick a buoy on them, but just something initially to make anglers aware of where this sort of habitat has been put in, and just to show that it works. Here's a research paper from Robert Harlenhaus's team over in Germany, and they looked at some of the improvements in fish numbers from adding deadwood into a gravel pit, and they were sort of seeing particularly benefits to species such as perch, roach, and pike, especially in the winter when these lakes become very, very clear, and gravel pits are lacking in habitat, particularly until they've become established, particularly in the margins. So by adding these deadwood, these brush piles, they were able to improve the sort of habitat for the sort of key species that they were interested in. I'm sure you've come across these before. It's sort of floating islands. This is a biohaven. This is a pre-made one. And you can sort of see in here the sort of value you get from them. You get both sort of terrestrial plants, and you also get that sort of root structure as well. This is from the AGA group to sort of show that they make them with sort of anti-predator cormorant cages underneath them as well. So you can get double benefits. You can put grazing protection on the top as well, so it stops the ducks and the geese from making a home on there and eating them, which they have a tendency to do. And they bring lots of benefits. You can put them in so they prevent bank erosion. If you've got a very windward, very sort of open body of water, you get a lot of wave erosion. You can use these almost as sort of barriers to protect the banks. This style with the cage helps predation. The roots take up lots of nutrients. They're good for nutrient stripping. They take out the sort of nitrates and phosphates, can help to reduce sort of algae blooms and things. And it adds a bit of aesthetic value as well. It brings something else to the fishery. So anglers and the general sort of wider ecology benefits from having them in there as well. So this is why I think it's down in Bristol docks. This is in amongst some flats, and you can see how the sort of the styles you can do. They don't have to be uniform. You can manipulate them and move them into any shapes that you want. They don't have to be massive. You can make them yourself. So you can see here's one taken out the water with the cage in situ, so you can sort of see the size of it. This is a little homemade one made out of some drain pipe and some coir matting and some plug plants, just sort of push through it. You can buy all of these bits and pieces from sort of DIY B&Q shops and make your own quite cheaply. They're a few quid can make you a good number of them, and you can put them into your fishery en masse. Here's some of the best ones that I've seen. So the one on the left is from an angling club up in the Lake District, and the one on the right is Ramsbottom Angling in the northwest. ram's bottom angling in here, you might just be able to make out this is actually an old lido, and it's concrete lined. There's a railing goes all the way around one side. There's a few steps on the other side. These buoys here are for the boat club, so it's a multi-use lido. So they also have the boaters on there, so they do boat racing and what have you on there. And this wasn't their first go at it. It took them several attempts to get it right. And what you can't see on here is there's actually a predator cage on there. So they built that up so there's a cage over the top so that the geese can't get on it and destroy it. But over a couple of seasons, they'll grow up nicely, and you'll get a real nice sort of plant community develop on there. And as you can sort of see on here, a couple of them in the middle. This is quite a mature lake, but they still add real, sort of aesthetic value and biodiversity value to the waters as well. Right, so just quickly moving on to look at predation, and a big thank you to Richard and Jake and Angling Trust. I've gratuitously ripped off their slides from some of the talks they've given to us for our fishery management workshops. And I know the guys, they go all over the country, visit loads and loads of fisheries, and some of the things that sort of come across. Particularly you've got a lake like this. They've taken the trees down, cut a lot of the cover down, and this is. We've taken out because the anglers were complaining, or they couldn't fish to it, or they were getting the tackle stuck in the tree. So we've took all the branches off, or we've reduced the cover. Next thing you know, the cormorants are in and they're having a free meal. And then they called Rich and Jake, and they go, "Oh, you need to put some cover in, or you need to string it, or whatever," and they'll lose that that value that they thought they were bringing to the water. And I've really just picked out what the guys sort of promoting around that sort of natural habitat improvement and the benefit from an anti-predation point of view, really. Develop reed beds, native tree species, putting in sanctuary areas is really important, both from a predation point of view, but also from an angling and a productivity point of view. If you can put in these out sort of no fishing areas or these out of bounds areas, the benefit both the fish and from a predation point of view, but also maybe from a spawning point of view, or from a feeding point of view, or a fry refuge point of view as well. So there's lots of value from having these sort of planted areas. Also, again, when you're adding in things like reeds and lilies and marginal plants, you're improving your spawning habitat, which and also you're improving water quality. But it's important to state that these, from a predation point of view, it doesn't sort of preclude cormorants from getting on the lake. It does make it harder for them to feed, and we know from research, that if you can make it harder for a cormorant to find find a fish, it will eventually sort of look elsewhere and move on to other waters. Again, there's lots of ways of doing this. So these are the pre-planted sort of coir sausages, and come with a number of plants planted into them. These are brilliant if you want to very quickly add some greenery and shore up a margin, as you can sort of see here. Richard got these slides from Andy Ellis, and you can sort of see, very, very quickly, bang some coir rolls in, and you've got a pre-planted margin. You're protecting that bank, you're adding in some habitat, you're adding in some nutrient stripping, and over time that'll grow and develop, and you've got a nice area for the fish, and also for an angling point of view and an aesthetic point of view as well. And so we touched on the refuges, but these are some really good examples. This is one where the cages are over the top, and you can sort of see that it prevents the birds from getting on there and wrecking them before they've even become established. It provides that much needed overhead cover. I think it's important to say with these as well, if you're putting in cages or floating islands, they do need to be dark. Fish want cover. They want it, the darker the better. They feel a lot more confident and comfortable if they are in a darker environment. And you can put them in areas where you think your predation is highest, where the fish are maybe moving to at times of year. And they do need to be managed. These aren't something you can just chuck in and leave. Yes, you do need to sort of maintain and look at the upkeep of them, and don't allow them to just become sort of loafing areas for birds, and particularly for cormorants. And again, I won't go over this in any detail, but you can see there's lots of styles and designs. Very sort of Heath Robinson, make them yourself sort of ideas. So just sort of looking at that and looking at habitat and the value, and this is an image we use a lot. It's taken from some old work that was done many years ago, but looking at the carrying capacity of waters. and stocking and stock density. And really, it's just to show, the valuable and the vital thing here is your plants. The more plants and algae you have, the more invertebrates, shrimps, snails, Daphne it supports, the more fish that supports in the way of roach, and eventually, obviously, predation in the form of pike or perch, whatever it might be. So, yeah, really, the key here is that pyramid works by having a big base, and that big base is made of plants and algae. So, to spend just 2 minutes sort of going over a few benefits of plants, really. I thank you to Tim Pankhurst of Plant Life for these next couple of slides. He gave a talk, a workshop around a few years ago, and it was a real eye-opener looking at the numbers and species of aquatic plants we've got. There's 151 species of native aquatic flowering plant in the UK. I'd probably struggle to do 20. And some of these are I admit some of these are very niche, living particularly very isolated spots, some of them. But yeah, there's lots. There's also 29 aliens, which I'm sure some of you have come across in your fisheries already. You've got things like New Zealand pygmy weed, Australian water stonecrop. You've got Lagarosiphon. There's invasive ornamental lilies. There's a whole raft of these things that Azolla. We've got lots of them now that are becoming more and more common around the country. So basically, 180 species of aquatic plants. Some of the common ones, so the potamogetans, I'm sure you're aware of. Did you know there's 21 species of them, plus 27 known hybrids? We just class them as potamogetan. You maybe know a couple of them, curly waterweed and the other ones. And so, but there's 21 different species, and some of these are very, as I said, they occupy particular niches within very particular habitats, but they live a long time. So, 8% of the UK flora, but it grows in 0.001% of the land area. And if you want to look at that for an example, we call it the Lake District, but only 3% of the Lake District is actually open water. The vast majority of it is hills and fells and mountains and everything else. So yeah, we've got quite a lot of plants living in a very, very small area. And the value really is in using that habitat and that diversity of habitat and the diversity of species to our benefit. When you're looking at a lake, you can put marginal plants in, which live majority in the dry side. You can put emergent plants in. You've got things like your typha and your phragmites. We could put floating leaf plants in, like our lilies and our potamogetans, and we could put fully submerged plants in, like your things like oh God, my mind's gone completely blank. Elodea, your Canadian pondweeds, those invasive plants would be Lagarosiphon, and your hornworts and what have you. Those submerged plants can be in there as well. This is an old picture from somewhere looking at gravel pits, and again, just sort of showing you those sort of different zones that you can use to your benefit within a fishery. You can put lots of different species of plants in, bring lots of value, both from a biodiversity point of view, but also from a fish benefit and a terrestrial and a bird and a wider sort of animal benefit within your fishery by using and planting up all these different zones. And looking at the research, the more plants you have, the greater the biomass of invertebrates. So the 5 times the biomass of invertebrates in submerged vegetation than on bare substrate. So it comes back to what we said right at the beginning when we was looking at rivers and looking at those areas with large woody debris. There's many more invertebrates with areas that have got structure and complexity than there are to open areas. All right, that might be a damselfly, a dragonfly nymph eating a fish, but it does show that this is free fish food. If you can develop these and add these in, you're benefiting the fish and also the bats and everything else, and swallows and whatever else might be there, as well as these things sort of hatch and develop. And this is what we're really aiming for, isn't it? That nice, broad, diverse sort of food web in a pond, lots of different elements. We've got filamentous algae, macrophytes down here, and they all feed in to each other as we sort of go through, and then it ends up at the top of the food chain as well, with the pike being up there as the top predator. So, just to finish, really, I wanted to look at when we are adding some new fish to a lake. So, adding some stock to a new lake, and again, looking at those pictures we touched on earlier. We really want to try and leave that lake barren for as long as we can. That maturation period really helps everything to develop. It helps the bacterial colonies to form, so we don't end up with things like ammonia spikes and nitrate issues. We can let the plants develop. These plants help with that, that sort of nutrient cycling. We create the habitat. We can use that time for putting our pegs in, our paths in, letting things mature before the anglers get on the lake and start to fish for it. We can look at doing water quality appraisals. Have we got the water right before we start to add our fish in? We can do invertebrate samples. We can look at densities of invertebrates and numbers of animals we've got living in there. So again, before we stock our fish in, have we got enough food there to actually support them? And this is the bit where lots of fisheries often struggle, is when you say to them, don't put all your fish in at once. That phased stocking, sort of a suck it and see approach, if you like. Put a few in, see how they go, add a few more, see how they go, add a few more. And if you can, try and put in larger fish. Bigger fish are more robust. I appreciate they cost more money, but they do tend to survive and fare a little bit better than smaller fish on that initial stocking. And again, I'm sure you're all aware of this. We stock our fish in the winter when it's cooler, when there's the water temperatures are lower, there's more oxygen in the water. The fish are a little bit more sort of dormant and stable, and it does do them. It's a lot better for them to be stocked. And even when angling pressure is maybe reduced as well, if you're stocking fish into waters that are stocked. But can we use what we've got to our advantage? Is there an alternative to stocking? Can we grow our own, if you like, and minimize that risk? Every time you bring fish into your lake, you're increasing the risk of bringing some pathogen with you. So if we can encourage natural recruitment, we can encourage fish to spawn naturally. That would be of benefit. We grow our own. These fish are wild fish grown from wild fish. Look at what the breeding requirements are of your species of interest. Try and provide some spawning habitat and fry refuges for them. I know a number of angling clubs now that have actually developed little ponds and off the back of some of their larger waters, and when they've seen spawning fish, predominantly carp, they're quite vigorous. They're not hiding away in a dark corner when they're doing this. They're actually going, they're hard at it. You can spot a spawning carp. You can often walk straight through the middle of them and they're not remotely bothered. They've taken up that weed or whatever the substrate might be they've spawned on, putting it into a pond, but it's warmer. They've developed it for fry, and hatching the eggs in there and bringing those fish through and putting them back. So the wild fish, sustainable or self-sustaining population of fish. And again, it doesn't require you to think about predator control. Can we improve the habitat? Again, coming back to these areas, these no fishing zones, or you add in floating islands, so we can start to encourage fish to spawn and actually try and support the production of our own species. And if we're going to do that, do we have the right nutrition for those species? Have we got enough natural food? What's our bait policies within the lake? Are fish reliant on an incomplete diet? Do they rely just purely on angler baits? If that's the case, is that nutrition enough for them to grow and develop robust eggs that are going to survive? What are we feeding them on? Are our anglers using trout pellets, high oil, high fat, high protein, versus something that's actually designed for them in a purpose-made carp pellet? Again, we can do a little bit of work, a bit of research. We can alter maybe how we manage our anglers to benefit the fish that we want to grow and want to breed and to spawn. And then really just to finish, you can have too much of a good thing. If you go too far and you overstock your lakes, then you're going to start to compromise your habitat. We're looking at improving our habitat and bringing it and making sure our habitat is right and for the fish we've got, but we can go too far. You overstock, you push that carrying capacity too far one way, you rapidly exhaust those natural resources. You end up with water quality problems. You have too much nutrients going into the lakes. You end up with eutrophication, which can then lead to algae blooms, wild swings in oxygen. We start to see deficiencies in our nutritional deficiencies in our fish. So they go off the feed, they become susceptible to disease. Pathogens can get in. We lose we lose that habitat. Particularly you think about overstocked waters full of carp. There isn't a lot of floating or submerged plants within those sorts of waters. They tend to be quite dark and dingy, and a lot of mobile sediment in there. Stunted fish, you end up with things like this. Yeah, I know that's a juvenile bream, and we often refer to them as skimmers as we skim them across the surface, but they are quite thin. You shouldn't be able to shave with them. Yeah, that's a fish that's got nutrient deficiency, and certainly is stunted as well. And it is, that poor utilization of stock. So really, just to wrap all that up, habitat is absolutely key. It's vitally important to get it right, to benefit both the fish and the wider sort of ecology, that biodiversity of the lake. We need to look and do some work to make sure and maintain it. It's not an easy job. We do need to work on it continuously. We need to make sure we've got the right plants in there. We're not putting anything that might be too invasive, too encroaching, that we need to manage. We need to look at nutrition. We need to look at the stock we've got, and maybe can we use the stock we've got within the lake for the benefit of us and the angling club, without us having to spend loads of money on new fish. And I think that might be it. That's a picture of me on the left on that day when we all blanked on the canal. Not only did I not catch any fish, I almost got hypothermia into the bargain. So yeah, I'm all for summer fishing these days. I'm not going to go sit on the canal, I think, in that weather anytime soon. I think that's it, Alex.
Right, well, thank you very much for that, Paul. Obviously, a massive amount of information to take in there, but I think, yeah, that'll be a really, really great resource going forward, especially with the recording there. So, thank you ever so much. So we'll crack straight on with the Q&A, considering we're due to finish for past. So we've already having quite a few come in now. So first one is from Philip. So Philip says, any advice regarding the pros and cons of an aeration system using 3 solar panels and 8 linear diffusers would be much appreciated. The pool in 6.5 acres, and we plan to position the panels out of the pool. So any comments on the solar aeration and
I'm
like?
no expert when it comes to solar panels and aeration. I can just about wire a plug, so setting up aeration systems is maybe a little bit outside of my skills, but certainly what I will say with solar panels is make sure they're safe, secure, and somewhere where they can't be nipped. They do tend to walk. So if you've said, I can see on your question there, you're going to put them out on the pool. Great idea. You want some batteries, because obviously aeration, these solar panels work great during the day, but we know with oxygen levels that they tend to tail off during the night. So really what you want is your aeration systems to be on a timer or some sort of trigger, so that they're coming on in the summer months, July and August. You really want them firing up about midnight, 1 a.m. So that as the oxygen level starts to sag and starts to drop, we can flatten that sort of oxygen sag really. So there are people who are experts in aeration systems. I would suggest you talk to them about whether or not 3 solar panels. Again, I suppose it's the size dimensions of these solar panels, whether it would be enough to power your diffusers. 6.5 acres is a decent chunk of water as well.
No, absolutely, and I think it's probably worth mentioning at this point as well, Phil. By all means, have a chat with your local EA officers as well. See if
Oh,
they can offer
absolutely.
any.
Yeah, speak to you guys on the ground.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. See if they can offer any support. I know it's noticed in your presentation, Paul. I think you showed some of the floating islands at Windermere and Ambleside. I
Yes,
think
yeah,
it
we
was,
just
yeah, and
had, yeah.
they've got a fantastic aeration system, which I believe is solar as well. And we might actually have some resource on that I can send to you,
Well,
Philip.
I
So we'll.
think we've got the God. He's going to shout at me if he's listening to this. I've completely forgotten his name.
Nick,
He's going to talk for the institute next month.
right?
He's about his aeration systems, and he actually gave a talk for another organisation last week. But yeah, we've got him lined up to give a talk for the institute next month, so around aeration in lakes. So I'll make sure you get that.
Fantastic stuff. Right, thanks, Paul. Right, next one is from Julian. So Julian says, what methods are available to calculate the biomass of a lake which are available to clubs without excessive cost?
Crikey, now you're talking.
Who?
Fish move. It makes it really hard to count them. They're not like birds, which you can stick a mist net up and they fly into it and you've got it in your hand. They are quite. It's difficult to estimate the biomass of your lake. There's ways of doing it without me telling you to drain it down and pull a net around it. and calculate biomass through seine netting. You could look at using angler catch. So you could run a series of matches and work out a biomass, a total biomass for the number of anglers you've got. You could go around and do creel surveys. You could get your anglers to do logbooks. You know, there's a whole way of getting information. You could ask, you could set up a simple online recording sheet. So every time anglers go, they record what they've caught, take pictures of them. It's difficult to do it without actually, you know, either pulling a net round it, or I mean, if you've got fish that are mobile in the winter and they all pond up at or shoal at one area, you could go around with a fish finder. You know, you could get a simple fish finder, find where they are, and look at it that way. But yeah, it's quite hard to calculate the biomass once the fish are in the pond. If you've got an empty barren lake and you're going to restock it, then you've got a bit of an idea. But even when we've done, we've stocked fish into fully covered concrete lidos and former swimming pools and I remember the work that Seafast did with cormorants back in the 90s. When they drained them down, they never got all the fish to put in out again. So quite where they go. It's very difficult to, I'm sure there's maybe the natural mortality and odd ones get eaten by each other, but yeah, it's quite hard to work out sort of biomass.
Yeah. So thanks, Paul. Right, so there's been a few questions along a similar line, so I'm going to try and roll them into one. So a couple of questions from Michael and a question from John, and they both relate to lilies becoming very invasive on a fishery. So Michael says, great idea planting, but if fisheries have depth restrictions, plants like Phragmites, fringe lily can become invasive and take over water, which can have a detrimental effect, especially when dying off or adding detritus. The issues come when trying to control them. And John has added, we have a problem with a particular variety of water lily, yellow flower, which has increasing potential to completely cover the surface of our pool, approximately 2 acres. This has become quite an invasive species for us. So along those sort of themes, then, if someone has got lilies on their water, which, you know, can provide great shade and stuff like that, obviously, what is the kind of regime for control? Is it just a management issue where you've just got to keep on top of it and that's where it stops, really? Or is there kind of another way of approaching it?
The lily in question, I suspect, is fringed water lily, which is little tiny yellow flowers, tiny little green leaves. Is often being stuck into fisheries because people have got it in their back garden pond and they think it looks lovely. And they go, we've got this. We'll chuck a bit in, and it gets a grip, and then it just spreads, and it spreads like wildfire, and it's very, very difficult to control. And it's the same with all these plants. Once they've got away from you, it's very hard to get them back in. What you can do with water lilies is you can hand cut them if you can get in. You can cut through the stems and the rhizomes and manually remove them that way. Same applies with Phragmites. You can cut Phragmites. You can spray Phragmites off if it's sort of in the margins. Just be careful as you cut and remove cover, you are removing that vital element of what you put it in for. You can go for a scorched earth approach and then you end up with nothing. So it's got to be sympathetic. I would have a word with regards to water lilies. I would have a word with your local EA fisheries officer because you can treat water lilies. We don't have any herbicides that are used that we can use anymore for submerged aquatic plants have all been banned. Glyphosate is still available, and you can add an adjuvant to it to get it to stick to the leaves of water lilies, which does treat them. But I would just have a word with your local EA fisheries officer before you start spraying glyphosate all over the place, just to make sure that they're comfortable with it. And obviously, if you've got any designations, protections, and things like that, they'll be able to give you some advice on dilution rates, where to get it from, what to spray it with, and etc. etc. And obviously, there are courses you can go on as well around sort of PA1, PA6 knapsack sort of sprays for that sort of thing as well. So yeah, the top tip here really when it comes to things like water lilies, plant native species, plant them in an area that you can control them. Don't stick them in because you think they look pretty and you've got them at the garden centre and the purple and orange and red and all that. They're ornamental, and they're ornamental for a reason. They're to go in a back garden pond. They're not to go into an open water where they can get a grip and get away from you. So yeah, plant sensibly and think about where these things are going to go. And if you need to manage them, can you get them out again?
No, that's brilliant. Thank you, Paul. Great advice. So next one in is from Craig. So Craig says, we rent a public park pond dug in the 70s. It's a fully lined pond and we do not have any subsurface vegetation. How can we improve this? We've tried floating islands, but these get bombed by ducks, geese, etc. So I guess one fix could be, I can't remember what it was called. It was on one of those floating islands that was in your presentation before with the stuff to stop
Yeah, you put
birds
bird cages on
nesting.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so
it.
you plant them up with a bird cage on
Mm.
basically. So you put some weld mesh over the top. So put them in planted, and then you put structure over the top of them. And I've seen this loads of times when you go to lakes, and you go, "What's that stick floating out?" And then it's like a block of mud in the middle of the lake. Oh, that's our floating island. And the geese have basically just been living on it, and they've eaten everything. As soon as the shoots come through, they just get mullered, and that's that. And once it becomes a muddy, it just becomes muddy. Just all you've created is an in-lake sort of birdhouse, if you like. You can protect them. Again, you put some structure over the top of them to keep the geese off. If you haven't got any subsurface vegetation, again, park lakes can be difficult because you're often limited by what the council will let you do. You know, they've often got pedalers on them in the summer, and they don't want you sticking concrete blocks with Christmas trees stuck in them. Yeah, anywhere where people might fall in and bang their heads and what have you. You might want to try and plant it up in the margins. Yeah, so using some of these coir rolls, those pre-planted coir, so you can get ready. Very very quick sort of structure. But again, they're easily pecked and damaged by the birds. Think about maybe putting in some even things like Hessian sacks with some rhizomes already grown, sort of established in them. Put them into areas where they can still get sunlight, and they'll grow. They'll if they become established before the birds can actually get hold of them. Yeah, just be careful with park lakes because I know they're often multi-use and they're normally quite shallow. Yeah, so you if a swan can get to it, it'll eat it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So yeah, take our message. Be careful with what you do, and yeah, give those cages a go. So thank you, Paul. Right, next one in is from Rob. Evening, Rob. Hope you're well. So Rob says, speaking on behalf of Peterborough District Angling Association, how would you address issues with spawning areas becoming unused due to the predator evasion behaviour of fish? For context, we have historically successful spawning gravels at Castor Backwater on the River Nene, including improvements and expansion as a result of FIP projects with the Environment Agency, but we are seeing a severe decline in usage due to the increased presence of otters and cormorants, leading to a lack of recruitment and declining catch returns. The fish are displaying unwillingness to relocate for spawning and are instead failing to spawn during the regular time period.
You've created a problem by solving a problem. God,
That's a difficult
that's a
one.
question. So when you've got something like that, so on the Nene, so you talk about it's a backwater of the Nene. Where are those fish going to spawn? So if they're not willing to come up to the areas where you've created spawning gravels because the predators are tracking them down, they must be going somewhere, or they must want to go somewhere else to spawn. So is there a project there in trying to find those areas where they are going to spawn and look at, and it might be suboptimal, so you're not getting that recruitment coming back. Could you develop another area for those fish to spawn? There's been lots of work done on spawning fish, particularly things like bream, and they are quite they are quite loyal, for want of a better term, to their spawning areas. I forget the technical term. They like to go back to where they've always gone to. So if you've lost your adult fish because the otters and cormorants have found them when they've been spawning, then you need to look at developing another area, or do you try and manipulate the area you've got to make it harder for the predators to find them? That's a really difficult one to just say do this.
Yeah.
I would be back to the guys Yeah, I know the guys around your area on the agency, and I'm sure they'd love a head scratching challenge to
Mm.
try and work that one out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm sure, Rob. That's a a question that we can pass on to some of our colleagues as well and get more input on that because yeah, it's a real challenging one, but hopefully we can find a way forward on that. So thank you, Paul. Right next from Ian. So Ian says, "Have you any tips for controlling crayfish in lakes?"
Jesus, they're big
That's
questions. Huh?
yeah,
Crikey, you have some easy ones. Oh, God, depends where you are.
yeah.
Yeah, it really does. And what your lake is, how deep is it? What are the sides like? You know, and I've got a friend who has a fishery in the Midlands, and he's overrun with crayfish, and they trap and trap and trap and trap. He did drained it down, took everything out, got all the vegetation out, reflooded it, and they still got back in because they're in the nearby river. So he just tries to trap them to death. I could tell you to stick predators in, chub like them in rivers, did I like them in lakes when there's other things to feed on. It's difficult. I'll be controversial. The otters like them.
Mm,
Yeah. So yeah, it's again, it's very difficult. Once they're in, I think we again we've had them in a gravel pit on a syndicate. I was a member of up here, and you chuck a handful of halibut pellets in, and you give them 5 minutes, and you can see them just crawling along the bank. And all we did in there to try and control them was to trap them and they reduce the population. Yeah, there's ideas in rivers to try and manipulate and manage the populations. Yeah, there's maybe some research you could do there. I know there's a few native crayfish um, projects on the go where they're looking at signal crayfish management and things like that. So that there are options, but it's very difficult once they're in.
yeah. No, I can imagine that. And I mean, I'm sure I've read as well, Paul, that unless it's a very small still water, that trapping it has a sort of minimal effect, doesn't it? Because the
It
bigger ones
exacerbates the
predate
problem.
on
Yeah,
the
you can make it worse.
makes it
Yeah,
worse.
you take out the big ones,
Yeah,
and then the little ones can come through. There's all sorts of ideas, isn't there?
yeah,
Sterile males. I mean, grabbing
oh,
the
yeah,
adults and sterilizing them and putting them back, and yeah, it's a difficult. They're a difficult animal to manage.
yeah, yeah. No, definitely. Well, that's one that you might want to try a few different things there, Ian. But yeah, unfortunately, no simple answer for you there. So
It tastes nice.
apologies. They taste lovely, don't they? It's just yeah, if you can get
Yeah, I
hold of
often have them
some.
on the barbecue at my mate's place.
Oh yeah, no, lovely. Well, we can't
Yeah,
be advocating for that, unfortunately, can we?
that's part of
Uh,
the reason the spread's so far.
yeah, no, dead right. But yeah, no, we could certainly talk about crayfish all night, but we'll have to move on. So next one from James. So James says, where stroke how is the best way to source margin vegetation for a newly dug out lake, approx 1.5 acres?
There's
Okay.
loads of nurseries, James, that you can get your plants from. That I won't give out any names but there are plenty. You can find them on the internet quite easily. Buy them from a nursery because I'd say take them and transplant them from elsewhere. But if it's a newly dug lake, there's nothing in there. There's a risk with translocation of plants from elsewhere. If it's on the same site, I'm not saying you go down to the river and start pulling out handfuls of vegetation. If you've got other lakes, then but you do run the risk of bringing other things with you. So you only need a few fronds of certain plants, the Zola and LED or anything like that, and it'll take over. So if it's a newly dug lake, bring in fresh new plants from a nursery and go that way. And again, these guys are experts. They'll be able to tell you the right mix. They'll be able to tell you where, what sort of depths and species you want, what the planting rate is to get maximum uptake as well. And what I would say is be diverse. You don't have to just go for one block of plants. You can plant numbers of species. You can bring some interest into it as well.
Mm. No, absolutely. That's yeah, you have a great point, isn't it? I mean, yeah, the more diverse, the better, I guess, in a lot of ways, isn't it? So if you can, if
Mhm.
it's something you can do, then definitely worth pursuing. Um, right. So there's a couple of questions in relation to algal blooms, which are quite interesting. Um, so first one from Eli. Apologies if that's Ellie. I've misread that. And from Simon. Um, So first one is my lake is next to the River Trent. The river floods and raw sewage comes into the lake, bringing huge amounts of nitrates and phosphates. I work so hard to improve the water quality, then the river floods and I get massive weed growths and problems with algae. I treat the algae and the weed grows even more. Any advice on what I can do? And then a follow-up question from Simon is, can you trace an algal bloom, i.e., where it goes green? Is that always the first point to the source of nitrates, which is quite an interesting point. So,
Um, I feel for you, Eli. I really do. Yeah. Anywhere on the banks of the Trent these last few years, it's just a constant sort of barrage of floodwater, isn't it? And that's a really good point as well. Yeah, the water coming from external sources often carries with it a hell of a lot of nutrients. Particularly as we all well, we well know that the nutrient rich with raw sewage in a lot of them, particularly at times of high flows. There's ways and means, I think, of trying to manage it. You want to try and strip it out. So again, you say you try and fix one problem so you can dye it to try and manage some of the weed growth. You can put these lake dyes in. You can try and bind up the phosphates and the nitrates that are feeding the algae. Aeration sometimes helps, to break it up. Barley straw is another option. You could put barley straw bales in. Loose bales, we're not talking about roll a bale of straw into your lake, break it up, put it into onion sacks or Christmas tree netting, and put that in as well to try and manage the algae. I think, really just hit it with as many things as you can. If you can plant up some marginal plants as well, if they'll strip out some of the nitrates and phosphates. They sometimes use them as biofilters on some sites. So if you can, you can build reed beds and encourage some of the sort of marginal plants to grow. They'll start to help you to trap some of those nutrients that are then just feeding the algae. Then put some dye in, then put some barley straw in. Get your barley straw in early doors. It wants to be in really in the next few weeks so that it starts to break down before the algae becomes established. Continually rotate that through the season, and then try and add in, as other things that you want, marginal plants, things to try and strip out some of them nutrients. And with regards to tracing an algae bloom, depends what you're meaning. So if you're tracing it, you're talking about in a lake, where it goes green first always point to the source of the nitrates? Not necessarily. If you're talking about an algae bloom in a river, then it's it's very what we refer to as diffuse. It can come from a wide area, particularly in rivers. If you want a prime example of diffuse pollution causing algae blooms, have a look on the River Wye. What's been happening over the past couple of years? It goes green, and it goes green at a point where those nutrients are built up. There's enough sunlight and the algae blooms, but the source of that is in the headlands, in the upper reaches. It's the chicken farms, it's poor land use practice, it's agricultural nutrients leaching off further up the system. So in that respect, no, where you see the algae isn't where the nitrates and the phosphates are. It's often a consequence of what's going on further on. In a Stillwater, yes, that's where it is. That's where it's coming from. It's just a buildup of nutrients over time within the Stillwater that causes the algae bloom. And I will say with algae, it is just becoming more and more problematic with climate change and changing weather patterns. A friend of mine sent me a picture the other day of his lake where it's gone green in a corner with just said, "What the F? Surely not at this time of the year." And it was I sent it to a colleague and he thought it was a blue-green algae bloom in January. So
real,
yeah, what we used to think, well, algae is a warm water, bit of heat, bit of sunlight, few nutrients. Not always the case.
Mm, mm. No, very interesting stuff. So thank you, Paul. Right, so couple from Alan. And I think this is quite an interesting one. So Alan says, your thoughts on introducing bait fish into a trout lake, 3 acres, stocked with rainbows and browns, now in the region of £4.
So by that you're implying that you would want to add small cyprinids. So you're turning, hoping that those trout would become piscivorous and would feed on the bait fish instead of, because obviously you need something to support them, and then maybe the invertebrates community within that lake has been exhausted by those larger fish. Not something I've ever seen done. I would suggest, if unless it's a small commercial sort of put and take type trout fishery, then you will have a natural sort of background of coarse fish that may be in there. You'll maybe see shoals of small roach and things developing over time, and they always tend to get in, don't they? You know, your small cyprinids, and would your trout would predate on those. I would be loath to add fish on top of fish because you're only adding to the biomass. Maybe look at doing some habitat improvement. You know, develop some reed beds and weed beds where the natural food ladder can develop. You know, can we grow some food? You know, as I said in my presentation, you know, if we develop the margins and what have you, you know, can the invertebrates grow within that, which in turn will feed the fish.
For sure. Thank you, Paul. Right, so I can see Rob's actually just come back with regards to his point earlier about the spawning areas on the Nene. So Rob says they are frequenting locally to the areas with a feeling of wanting to spawn, but failing to do so successfully as they're repeatedly scared off. So again, very interesting case that, Rob, and I think it's something we'll have to look at in a bit more detail. So next one from Andrew. So Andrew says, any advice on control of reed, as we are finding they progress out into the lake over the years, making more bank and less lake? Should they be cut or burnt every 2 years or so?
You can certainly manage them. I would certainly look at harvest is not the right word. We're not thatching rows of them, are we? But, you know, sort of cutting them and managing them. Don't let them encroach. What you find with them is when you cut them, they will grow back. You know, they're a plant. You cut them and they grow back, and they can grow back denser than when you cut them. And from a fish habitat utilization point of view, you don't want dense reed beds because the fish can't get in. You know, if you've got dense reeds and they're all butted up against each other, so what you might find is you might want to actually cut lanes into them so that your fish can get in, you know, and can find some areas. But oh gosh, yeah, certainly don't let them just encroach. Get in there and get them out. Cut them, side them, pull them. You know, they're a rhizome. So the spread, one plant puts up lots of different shoots. So pull the rhizomes out, chuck them up the bank, let them drain. They'll go to nothing. They'll turn crispy, and then you can use them as fertilizer somewhere else, or get rid of them. But yeah, another thing, if you've got dense reed beds and you've got a lot of predation, is you can just actually hinge them. You can just half chop them so they fall over. And instead of them being upright 5 foot, they're laid in the water 5 foot. So over a winter, you actually get another layer of cover so the fish can get underneath. So you can double your benefit, and then get them out before they become established in the summer.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. But I mean, because you know, I think the number of anglers who look at a reed bed and just think, well, it starts and stops where I can see it, you know, without considering those sort of things. I think it's really you know, and it's so simple as well, isn't it, to do?
And depth often limits them as well. You know,
Yeah.
so you know they don't like really deep water. They like they like the feet wet, but they like the heads in the clouds, so to speak. So often depth is a limiting factor for reeds, and obviously light penetration. If light can get down, then they can grow. So you often see that, particularly if lakes do have a traditional shelf and dip off, they'll hold on the top of the shelf.
No, it's really interesting stuff. Thank you for that. So one from Les. So Les says, we have a Stillwater lake, prox an acre and a half with depths from 8 to 12 foot. We never managed to get dissolved oxygen levels to stay above 70% even in winter. We've installed 2 floating islands in place ready for the next season and in the process of removing some trees to increase wind movement across the lake. We also have 2 aerators on timers as well. Do you think there is an issue with dissolved oxygen levels as the lake always has signs of lots of fish fry?
You've got a lot of water to play with at 12 foot. Yeah, 8 to 12 foot deep is a decent depth of water. You'll get a decent sort of thermal profile through there as well. Shallow water, if you said it was 1.5 acres, it was 4 foot deep and it was 70%, then you're gonna have issues. Good idea is cut some trees down so we can get some wind action on there. You know, work out where your predominantly your wind comes from, get some trees cut down in that area so we can get some wind energy onto the water would be great. It'll help it mix. I would want to know what your sort of percentage. You've said put 70% saturation, but what's your sort of milligrams a litre of oxygen within that water at that time to create 70%, and at what temperature? But I would, if you keep it at 70% and you're not seeing any signs of distressed fish, your fish are obviously spawning. If your fish are feeding, it sounds to me from what you've said, floating islands and aeration and tree, you're doing as much as you can. It might be a sediment issue, maybe if you've got a lot of aerobic bacteria in there. It's breaking down a lot of the sort of the plant material and that sort of organic matter within your lake, and that can often subdue your oxygen levels a little bit. So maybe have a think about that as well. If you've got a lot of tree cover and you've got a lot of leaf litter, you've got a lot of margin, a lot of vegetation, and it's adding to that organic load. And sometimes that aerobic bacteria can use quite a lot of oxygen. And also mouths. If you've got a lot of fry, lots of fish, lots of mouths, lots of oxygen.
Makes sense. Makes a great deal of sense. So thank you, Paul. We've actually just gone slightly over time. There's just a few questions left, Paul. If you would you be happy just to carry on for a couple of minutes and
You'll have to pay me overtime, but
well, that could be arranged, I'm sure, but I'll try and make it quick.
yeah, cool.
So from Richard. So this is in reference to one of the earlier questions. So Richard says one benefit of fringe lily is that it'll only grow in up to about 3 to 4 feet of water. I have it in my 22-acre lake, which apart from the narrow, shallow margins, averages around 16 foot plus in depth. The fringe lily adds greatly to the habitat, but simply doesn't, stroke can't become a problem. So I guess that's an example of horses.
It's exactly it. Yeah. What do they say? What's a weed? It's the wrong plant in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you've only 4 foot deep, then as I said with reeds, the depth is a
Mm.
limiting factor a lot of the time. If they can't get up to the surface, they can't get any sunlight, and particularly with lilies, they just won't grow.
Yeah.
So you can maintain them within an area. But if it was 16 acres and it was 5 foot deep, then you'd have a problem. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I think that's a really important point to know. If you've got the right plant in the right environment, and it can be managed, or it manages itself because it's depth limited, then absolutely.
Yeah. It goes to show, doesn't it? Yeah, if you find something that works for you in the right context, then it can be brilliant. And I've just seen as well, he's just put RE My Lake. It's 22-acre gravel pit in North Yorkshire, less than 30 years old, which I've managed for 14 years now. Gently developed as a traditional mixed course fishery. It's now seeing phenomenal success with all species reaching extremely good numbers and sizes. Roach £2 plus, breams £14 plus, and there were no bream in it 14 years ago. Tench to £8 plus, carp and pike to 30 plus, huge invert population, etc., etc. I'd be happy if you share my details around if anyone wishes to hear my experience of its development. I've no formal fisheries management experience or qualifications, but I do my research. Well, Richard, it sounds like if you can possibly pass me the details about going fishing on there
I was
as
going
well.
to say, Rich, I live in East Yorkshire. Drop me an email.
Yeah. So yeah, that's no, I really appreciate you offering that, Richard. It's very
And
interesting.
this is the thing. I think you're talking about water like gravel pits. They do get you have to nurture them over time because they don't come to you. You don't get the keys in the fully formed environments. They're often barren, open expanses of water, and you need to nurture them over many, many years. You look at all the famous gravel pits. They've got better. They were dug in the 50s and the 60s for gravel for the M25, and it went to the 80s and 90s that they started to really show that what they were made of.
Yeah. 100%, 100%. So just a few more. So from Paul, can concrete pipe sections be used to contain root growth for lilies?
Bit restrictive.
Bit
Yeah.
restricted.
So if you want to put lilies in, then look at something like Hessian sacks and weight them down, put some medium in them. And then as the lily will grow, the rhizome will break out of the Hessian and will naturally anchor itself into the bed. You can use you can buy these aquatic buckets and things you can put in. Just something so that once the plants have established, the whatever the medium is they're held in starts to break down, and the plants will establish themselves. And once they're established, that's it. Then they're in situ.
I'm not sure whether Paul's meaning as in planting in there with a view to him not spreading.
Oh, sorry. Yes, but
Yeah, it's one of
once they're out at the end of the concrete pipe, the rhizomes are just going to spread.
mm,
Yeah, when you see them and they're as thick as your forearm, yeah, they're a serious plant is a
yeah,
lily rhizome.
yeah. No, it's an interesting point. Right, so just a few more. So from Eric, even Eric, if you're still there, I didn't realize you're on the call. Not a question, just big thank you. Really interesting and valuable advice. That's thoroughly appreciated, Eric. One from Brian. So Brian says, "Hi, I'm Brian from the Luton Angling Club. I'm a committee member and bailiff. My question is, how can we make a 20-acre lake shared with the golf course less barren? Fishing is fantastic in summer as fed by the river, but in winter fishing is blank." I guess that might be an indication that all the fish are going somewhere in winter.
Well, you often a problem with these sorts of lakes. So what that we refer to that as it's an inland lake. So by that we mean it's a river at one end, then it's a lake, then it's a river goes out. So it's got an inlet and an outlet. Um, it can be quite difficult to manage because obviously anything you want to put into them can often get in and get out. So it's the things like you say, well, you can add extra fertilizer, you can add nutrients, you can add dye. You can't because it generally's got a flow rate. It's only got a residency rate of a certain amount of time within the lake. Um, if you've got an open body of water, then floating islands would be a good idea. You can add a bit of structure into the middle. I'm sure the golf course would also quite like that as well because it adds another bit of color into the water.
Cool.
You'd want a little bit more information from them as what's happening in the winter. Is the color dropping out the lake? Does it make it easy for predation? Do the fish? You suddenly another thing, of course, when you've got lakes like that, anglers and bodies and golfers will keep your predators away. So the more bodies and feet you have on the ground, the less likely you are for your predators. As soon as the golfers put the clubs away
Great
in
point.
October, what's happening on the lake?
Mm.
Are the cormorants coming in early in the morning? Is there more predation? Is that then shift your fish? Are all the fish tucked up somewhere in a corner under the trees or whatever? So maybe a bit of an investigation, Brian, as you're wandering around in the winter to see if you can see any fish. Put your Polaroids on, get up some trees, have a look down into the clear water, and then look at maybe adding some structure in the spring so that or in the summer maybe so that when it does come to the next following winter, you've got something in there.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Paul. Right, so finally, just a couple of comments left. So another from Rob. So Rob says, with a mindset that habitat is vitally important, on the flip side of this, how do we address the argument that increased habitat and more successful recruitment is also essentially increasing the larder for predation, evidently leading to an increase in cormorant numbers? As an example, evidence that Ferry Meadows, where we are currently undertaking several FIT projects, at what point is a critical point of action to tackle predation directly required? Rob, I think that's probably a question for Richard and Jake, who were referenced in the presentation earlier. I mean, I'd always be of the opinion that these things are about balance. I think it's probably a nice problem to have if you've got that many fish there that there's loads of otters and cormorants descending, but obviously, as you say, it can be a difficult one. But I think, I don't know
Yeah,
if you want to comment, Paul.
Ferry Meadows is a big open body of water, isn't it, as well? Yeah. So yeah, that yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? You increase predator-prey relationships work on they're in balance, aren't they? The more prey you have, the more predators you have, and the predators then knock back the prey to such a point where there's not enough for them, then they move on, and then the prey rebounds and the predators come back, and that's that vicious circle you've always got. So you're doing something well because you're creating obviously your productivity is there, so you're generating lots and lots of young fish that are coming through. But then if they all get to that point where the cormorants can nail them, then you need to look at how you can manage your cormorant predation.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, just
And that's
looking.
so they have a size preference to cormorants. If you look at all the research that's been done on cormorant predation, and Rich and Jake, I'm sure can send you the information if you want. but they have a yeah they're a gate limited predator by many respects. If it doesn't go in the mouth, and I appreciate we've all seen pictures of cormorants with
Yeah.
a 2 pound trout going chucking it in the air and trying to swallow it, but generally that's a lot. You know, if they're like a size preference, and you'll often see when you look at the research that size, the size range they like is gone from the population. There's really small fish, there's really big fish, and everything that a cormorant can eat disappears. So
Mm.
it's getting rid of the cormorants to allow those fish to be big enough to be out of the range of a cormorant's
Yeah.
beak.
Yeah, this is it, isn't it? And I mean, that Rob just come back and basically said exactly what you just said there. You know, it's about having a bubble burst, and there's yeah, nearly entire missing year groups because of, you know, I think what you just referenced there, Paul, with the
Okay, yeah, I
fish.
should have read that.
It's all right. No, just but you know, I say it's really really interesting stuff, and we'll definitely look to follow that one up for you, Rob. And yeah, and so finally, I can just see Les has come back as well and says at the moment we have 49.7%, 5.9 milligrams a litre at 8.1 OC. I'm not going to pretend to understand what that means because I'm not as scientifically minded as other people on this call.
So 50% saturation. So milligrams a litre is 5.9 milligrams a litre at 8 degrees water temperature. So if you're looking at that the level we always sort of try and aim for with regards to oxygen levels within a milligrams a litre point of view is about 6. So if we can maintain somewhere around between 5-6 milligrams a litre, that's generally sort of seen as being that sort of the bottom end of a comfortable zone for most fish. So for 8 degrees, you know, is at sort of 6 milligrams a litre. Yeah, he's at this time of year, he's in that sort of 65-70% sort of mark. And I'd be comfortable with that as a reading. And I'd just be really, yeah, just be conscious of monitoring that as the weather starts to warm up, and that temperature starts to increase. You know, if it's if it's sort of drops below sort of 5 and the temperature starts to get 14, 15, 16 degrees, then you're into that, you know, the sort of potential sort of lethal effects on fish, particularly if it's coarse fish. Yeah, that's the salmon is slightly different. They're not as robust. They tend to die quite easily.
No, absolutely. Right. Well, I can see there is just one very final one, which we will do very quickly from Ainsley. Ainsley says sources of plants and advice for in-river planting, and that is Limonstone, Derbyshire, Wye, Derwent. I guess that's something the Wild Trout Trust would probably be
I
all
would
over.
get on to Sean and Gareth and everybody else and have a chat with the Wild Trout Trust guys. But again, you can, yeah, if you've got other plant within rivers, if you've got other areas, then you can transplant them. Yeah, we've done it a bit on some of my rivers up here. I mean, we're transplanting ranunculus in chalk streams, which is a little bit
Yeah.
more sedate to the Derbyshire Wye and rivers like that. I know the Derbyshire Wye, it can barrel through a bit. We don't tend to no, say that after last week on the chalk streams, they're all bank high. But yeah, we've done transplanting of plants and it does work. But make sure you're using them from within the same system. But again, yeah, and that was Wild Trout Trust to be a good shout. I would have thought down your neck of the
Yeah,
woods.
definitely. And your local Rivers Trust as well will probably be happy to get involved.
Yeah, so
You know,
that'd be the
just
Trent, wouldn't it? Guys, yeah, Trent Rivers Trust, yeah.
yeah, well, yeah, Bark. I mean, you know, and with, you know, regards to planting, I've certainly seen it on the Mersey catchment. Mersey Rivers Trust have done loads of planting work in rivers recently, and it's, you know, the effects have been really positive. Right, so that brings us to an end. Apologies, we have overrun slightly. Paul, you checked in the post already. I've just been done it. But no, as always, thoroughly appreciated. You know, I think I can speak for everyone on the call by saying, you know, having access to your knowledge, Paul, is absolutely invaluable for all of us that are involved in fisheries management. So huge hats off to yourself and thank you for
No
that.
worries, anytime.
Obviously, thank you to everyone for turning out tonight as well. I hope you found it useful. As I said, we've recorded all that, so we'll circulate it, get a Q&A round as well. And also thanks to Mark in the background who's been doing the notes for everybody. Just one final thing to add before we do sign off. We do actually have another virtual forum this Thursday, which is going to cover the work of the participation team within the Angling Trust. So if anybody is interested in the kind of big grand scale national efforts to get more people fishing, you've got questions, you've got comments, things like that, we're going to have a really good panel from that team on offer for you on the evening. So if you want to sign up for that, just visit a website. There's a link on there, or alternatively, just drop me an email and I'll send you all the details through. And yeah, finally, if you can just spare a couple of minutes just to fill out that Q&A when we finish, it'd be thoroughly appreciated. So I will leave you all to your evenings. Thank you again, and we'll hopefully speak to you soon.
Cheers, guys. See you later.